Here at Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. I don't think anyone can get over what's going on over in Ukraine. I think it is all of the oxygen being sucked out of the room, out of the air. It is all encompassing. There really is, while there's so much else going on, there's almost nothing else going on. I spent time today looking around the news, and everything led me back to the atrocities that we're seeing. The Putin death machine is bombing residential buildings, bombing cities where people live. These aren't military installations. These aren't military targets. These are where people live. And they're doing this on purpose to cause as much pain, as much suffering. They're leaving people without electricity, without water, without heating. They're intentionally freezing people to death. This is the goal. People have no access to food, medicine. All the supply lines have been cut off. This is the goal. Look, this is Putin's war. This isn't about two militaries going at it. These aren't about soldiers fighting each other. This is one of the most powerful militaries in the world beating up on civilians, on women making Molotov cocktails in the basement, on just average everyday people taking what arms they have up against one of the most powerful militaries in the world. And the outcome is bloody. It's going to be certain. There will be lives lost. There will be things blown up. There will be devastation. And as I was thinking about it earlier today, this is kind of like an abusive relationship where you got a guy goes, well, if I can't have you, nobody can. This is kind of that. What we're seeing is Putin's military, the Putin death machine, blowing everything up, leveling things, carpet bombing. We find out, as we knew, they're using cluster bombs, according to the UN. These are war crimes. We're watching war crimes, and we knew this was going to happen. This is someone who doesn't care about international law. This is someone who doesn't care about human life. And sadly, this tragedy. He doesn't even care about his own people. I mean, when you attack one of, I guess it's the largest nuclear plant in Ukraine, which, if you remember Chernobyl, that had blowback into Russia, lots of it. This attack led to a release. This would have been Russian citizens too. And this is what's frustrating about this, because this guy is a threat not just to the Ukrainian people, but to his own people, and as Boris Johnson put it today, his reckless actions are now a direct threat to all of Europe, directly threaten the safety of all of Europe. Question is, what's going to happen about it? Are the economic sanctions going to be enough? Hoping so. Hoping that the $1 million bounty that one of the billionaires put on his head comes through, because I finally agree with something from Lindsey Graham on. Lindsey Graham said the only way this ends is for someone in Russia to take this guy out. You would be doing your country and the world a great service. I agree. This is a unifying message. This is something that I think could pull us together, because this has to end. The people of Ukraine are being bombed. The cleanup after this is going to be unimaginable. the pain and suffering inside Russia, unimaginable. Their big stock exchange closed for, what was it, the fifth day in a row? They've lost tens of billions of dollars in wealth. Their oligarchs are not happy. They're losing money. And this is why maybe someone's going to take Lindsay up on this. But Russia's going into full control, full Soviet mode as they are grabbing a hold of the media. In fact, they have passed a law, they've approved a law that anybody spreading what they deem to be misinformation about the war or about the military or, well, whatever, 15 years in prison. 15 years. Because we don't want people, getting the wrong idea, like they're bombing civilians. Like there are videos on Twitter right now of people in their apartments watching the apartment building across the street being bombed. That would be misinformation. That would get you 15 years, which is why virtually every reputable news organization in the world that was operating inside of Russia has shut down and fled. Because this law being in effect means just reporting what is happening could get you 15 years in jail. And this is what the trolls yesterday who, under the hashtag I support Putin, did all day. Now, our Twitter, they just banned a couple people, about 100 accounts who are pushing the I support Putin account because they said, hey, look, and these are people who, are fire hose of falsehoods. So here they just ban you off Twitter. You can go back and make another account later, no big deal. But you're just banned. In Russia, you spread misinformation, you spread something they don't want you to say, 15 years in prison. Interesting times. And it's going to get ugly. Look, the misinformation war, the propaganda war, alive and well. As we talked about yesterday, RT, the Russian television station here in America, which always blew my mind. Honestly, always blew my mind how it is that RT America, Russian television America, a Russian state-owned propaganda cable news station, would have any footing here whatsoever. But did. And actually had some liberal voices on it, which just blew my mind. And for me, I'm looking in this moment going, it's going to be interesting because understand what's going to happen here after all this is done. Since the fall of the Soviet Union, and really since Putin took over, Russia has tried to integrate, capitalism with Soviet-style iron fist rule. But they've wanted the business. They've wanted the money. They've been very greedy. We want as much. We want more. And they've made tons of ties with the West. Tons of business deals with all the big corporations. The billionaires have, made all their oligarch and our oligarchs. They've all come together, to make really lucrative deals for themselves. Maybe some of it might eventually, possibly, I don't know, work its way down, but not a lot. That's all broken. Everything is fleeing. Everyone is leaving. And what's going to be left, and I think Putin has, I think he's miscalculated. It's going to be a while before those businesses come back, before those moneyed interests come back. And for me, the interesting part is going to be how much of that Russian money that flowed into the Republican Party, that kept the Fox channel and all of those right-wing outlets, on their side, the NRA, how much of that Russian money from these oligarchs flowing into those groups, how much of that's going to dry up? And it's something we need. It's something we need to be exposed. But it can be interesting to watch how that plays out. Now, in Russia, there is no independent media left whatsoever. Nothing. The entire staff of the Russian television channel TV Rain resigned live on air, declaring no to war in their final telecast. And this was This was great. A little shot back to history, a little a viral moment. They, as part of their, when they signed off, they played the Swan Lake Ballet video. And for those of us who were around back in 1991 when the Soviet Union fell, it's what was played when the Soviet Union collapsed in 91. So the messaging, seriously, the messaging is there, the imagery there. Because this is clearly the collapse of what was that attempt to westernize and to bring Russia into the rest of the world. This is Putin basically saying, nope, we're going backwards. And look, I've always believed that he's wanted to take Russia back to those days, to reclaim the glory of motherland and reconstitute the former USSR and get all those countries back. And, as I was thinking about it today, without the NATO expansion, because I've had a bunch of people go, well, the reason he's doing this is because they expanded NATO. That's not the reason he's doing this. He's doing this because he can. Imagine if they hadn't expanded. Where would he go next? How much worse could this have been? How much worse could this be? Now, the oligarchs cannot be happy. Their yachts are being seized. We talked about the one in Germany, $500 million. We talked about the one in France yesterday, and today one in Italy. A mega yacht was seized by a couple of Russian oligarchs, actually two of them. A 215-foot mega yacht, the Lady M, and Putin's bank, oddly enough. The other was seized as well, which, good for them. Maybe we can, like I said yesterday, maybe we can sell them off. We can maybe get a good price for them and then fix some of those apartment buildings and some of the lives that are being broken. Here at home, because look, the economies in both of those countries are completely shot right now. These are going to be humanitarian crisis for, well, congratulations, Pootie, for the next decade at least. But here back at home, there's a lot of push right now for President Biden to ban Russian oil imports. I think we should do that. But I think we should do that and simultaneously be moving not towards drill, baby, drill where the right wants to go, but moving towards alternative energies and quickly. But according to latest reports, even now Democrats are coming around to the idea of going, maybe we shouldn't have gas prices as low as they are. Maybe we should shoot those up a little bit, but cut off the money going to Putin. And I agree. But here's the thing, and here's where the frustration gets. Once we start doing that, and it's going to happen, it's got to happen. How far down the rabbit hole does Putin go? And I'd love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. If you've got a thought on this, how far does Putin go? How much worse does this get? Does he drop the big one? Is he willing to go that far? Will he blow up a nuke plant? Will he drop a nuke on Ukraine? And how does Europe respond? Is this solely a Europe problem? I think it's a globe problem. Because we're starting to see some of those moments. I'm worried about what China is going to do with Taiwan. I'm worried about them getting even more muscular than they've been. I'm worried that the globe splits back up into, not democracy versus communism, but authoritarianism versus democracy. The idea of these dictators. The ones our president likes, our former president likes, the one the Orange Menace likes, the one who said, that guy over there, that Putin boy, he's smart, he's savvy, genius. I'm grateful for the fact that Joe Biden is president in this moment. I'm grateful for that because cool, calm, steady leadership, We haven't had any extreme statements. No loudmouth. No craziness. Steadiness. Organizing the world. Pulling people together. And look, and I personally think Putin didn't plan on the world coming together this quickly. I personally don't think he thought that this would happen. I think he thought that the world was in disarray. Well, congratulations, Vlad. You done pulled them all together and did it really quickly. Let's go to the phone lines. Got Alice on line 1. Alice, what's on your mind?
Hey, Rick, how are you?
I am good. What's going on?
I wanted to say that for once, I actually agreed with Lindsey Graham. I thought I was going to faint.
I'm right there with you. No, I think the only way this ends is somebody does a Vladimir Putin on him and somehow poisons him.
I thought the same thing, but we have to remember it's probably been about I don't know 7-8 years ago that they were saying that Putin had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and that he was taking treatments. And then we didn't hear anything else about it. And then I think about a year or so after that, it was reported that he might have cancer. And I'm just thinking to myself, well, maybe he did have cancer and he might have Parkinson's. And who knows, he might, have gone completely over the edge, because I think that he will have absolutely no problem using nuclear weapons. I think the man's insane. We know he's a sociopath, and I think that he's just insane.
Yeah, the only hope that I have is that the people around him go, no, that's too far. I'm hoping that the military people around him go, no, that's too far, and then take him out.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have a problem with it. Like I said, when Lindsey Graham said it, I was like, the hell's frozen over.
Yeah, that blind squirrel
finds a nut. And angels are wearing ice skates because I agreed with him. But you have a good one, Rick.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate the call. Great stuff. No, I'm right there. At the end of the day, the Russian people are going to suffer. As I said, their economy is tanking. It's going to be bad. It's going to be ugly. The people in Ukraine are going to suffer heavily. And look, those two countries, they know each other. I mean, that's the weird thing. I mean, there are relationships on both sides of the border. And this is why I have this great fear. I have this great fear that what's going to happen is it's going to escalate beyond the borders in Ukraine, which is why I said before, I'm not in favor of a no-fly zone. I don't think NATO should get involved in this right now. Public sentiment is watching these atrocities and blaming who's responsible. Now, there's the part of me that goes, no, we have to go and stop this. We have to get involved. That's only going to escalate things and then turn sentiment against Ukraine and behind Putin, and then that escalates. At least that's my thought on it. I'm curious what yours would be. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com as well. This is just one of those things, and I'm hoping that someone does shiv him while he's in the shower or out the window. There's actually a word for that. Defenestrate, defenestor. Just a little shove, a little tumble, a little roll. Oops, right through the roof of a car. I know that. And look, here's the thing. I know that's bad for my soul. I know that is not good for me. But in this moment, watching these videos, I don't know how this is the thing about social media. And this is why Putin is doing everything they can do to limit what's getting out, and why they're putting such heavy penalties on anyone who puts anything out. Because once you see people's apartment buildings bombed, once you see residential areas bombed, once you see these things happen, you can't unsee them. Once you see these atrocities, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible. And again, my fear is, and to Alice's point, if there is something, if there is an illness, if there is something that is wrong with him, I'm sure hoping some of those oligarchs, some of those people who've lost billions, people who want to get business back to business, they get the business. I'm hoping some of those military leaders who are looking at those kids who they've sent into war to die, I'm hoping they're looking at this guy going, hey, is this worth it? And I'm hoping they're going, maybe we need to act. And I'm hoping the Russian people rise up. Ultimately, they're the ones that are going to have to do this, not us. And I had someone email me today. What kind of an American are you? We're the purveyors of freedom and peace and all this stuff. I'm going, yeah, but we shouldn't be shedding blood over this. That will only escalate things. And while I do, as someone who wants to fix things, as someone who wants to make things better, you go, yeah, you want it to stop. And do we have the power to make it stop? I don't know that we have the power to make it stop. I think we have the power to make it worse. But we keep with the economic sanctions. We keep with making things almost impossible on Putin to get through. Maybe there's regime change. Maybe he goes. And look, we're talking about this in, what are we, a week in? This is not what Putin had planned at all. And you got to wonder, as it gets worse, as this continues, as people begin to lash out, and I expect that to get, as the death toll rises, especially on the Russian side, as these atrocities continue to get out and people continue to see what's going on, and as there are people in the streets there in Russia, maybe the call. Maybe as we start, clawing back all of those properties in South Florida, maybe as we start grabbing all of those big boats that are all around the world, and we get all of that money that's stashed all over the place. And look, I say we grab it all. We find the entire Russian crime syndicates stashes all around the globe, all the billions that they've stolen from the Russian people, and they take that money and they fix what they've blown up. You broke it, you fix it. You think if this is one of those things where I go, this is what the president should do. He should come out and say, you know what, we're coming out, we're going to get all of it. We're taking it all. Don't care. Right now, we're taking it all and we're putting it into Ukraine. Do you think they'd act? I sure hope they would. Well, we'll see. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you're just joining us, make sure you download the podcast so you never miss a moment of the program. We've got special podcasts every week that come out. We're sitting down with folks. This week we did a great interview with with Scott Dworkin. That's right. I was thinking about Mr. Olson. We sat down with Scott Dworkin and had a great conversation with Scott. That's on our podcast table. We've got a couple coming up next week to look out for, all there at thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1989. That was the day machinists struck at Eastern Airlines. After bankrupting Continental Airlines to void union contracts there, the much-hated Frank Lorenzo hoped for a repeat at Eastern Airlines. Lorenzo bought Eastern with junk bonds and then bled the airline's profits dry to finance the debt of his holding company, Texas Air. 12,000 jobs were lost at Eastern in just 2 years under Lorenzo's leadership. Machinists had every reason to believe that wages would be cut in half in the next contract. In the weeks building up to the strike, management made its union busting clear by firing dozens of shop stewards at airports across the country. Machinists walked out at Miami Airport a month earlier over forced overtime. Nationwide, many complained that they were forced to work anywhere between 24 and 36 hours straight. 5 days into the strike, Lorenzo filed for bankruptcy. Picket lines were solid and the strike was popular. Many trade unionists joined the picket lines in support. The strike against Eastern symbolized a fight to take back everything lost during the Reagan years. The Airline Pilots Association and the flight attendants, organized by TWU, voted to walk out in solidarity. They stayed out for more than 8 months with the striking machinists. But when the pilots and flight attendants went back to work, it left the machinists isolated. Many argued that with contracts expiring at many airlines soon after the walkout, an industry-wide strike could only bolster chances for the machinists at Eastern to win. But by early 1991, the strike had become a devastating loss. Eastern ceased operations altogether in January, and its assets were liquidated.
Mega investor Warren Buffett once held a big portfolio of daily and weekly newspapers, and he specialized in squeezing out competitors, so each held a local monopoly. Then he'd chop staff and news content, letting him glean annual profit margins above 30%. But alas for poor Warren, along came the internet, allowing people to root around for free to find local information missing from his hollowed-out papers. They began losing readers, advertising, and profits, so in 2020, Buffett sold out his entire portfolio. But rather than concede that maybe his slash-and-burn profit maximization approach had produced inferior products, the Oracle of Omaha, as Wall Street had labeled him, blasted the whole idea of local newspapers as dinosaurs. They're toast, he proclaimed. But wait, your oracleness. When done right, local publications both chronicle and help shape a community story. And that's a social benefit that's as valuable and as marketable as ever. It's not that people have given up on local news, but that corporate-owned papers did. They're not local, not newsy, and not of, by and far, the workaday people in our communities. For example, nearly every corporate daily publishes a business section, which mostly amounts to yesterday's stock prices, corporate press releases, and syndicated filler. Does even 1% of the population read that stuff? Meanwhile, how about economic news of interest to the great majority of locals who are workaday families? Where's the regular section that digs into the wages, workplace conditions, and other real-life issues that confront this majority on a daily basis? This is Jim Hightower saying the relevant indicator of the well-being of nearly every American family is not the Dow Jones average, but the Doug Jones average. How are Doug and Donna doing? That's news that would sell papers.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So some good news. NPR PBS poll. Biden's approval rating jumped to 47%, up 8 points from last month. This is a State of the Union bump. You don't see this often. You do not see State of the Union bumps that often. Now, look, you start off at 39%. Up is the only way you can go, but 8 points is a pretty big jump. It's only happened, I guess they're saying 6 times since 1978, and 3 of them were Bill Clinton. Because, look, Bill Clinton was a really gifted orator. Granted, long. Did I mention long? Way too long, and I'm surprised that he got a bump out of that. But he was a very gifted speaker. But good to see. Good to see. And here to share some thoughts on the big State of the Union address. And was it worth an 8-point bump? I've asked our good friend Max Burns to come talk with us. Max is a columnist over at the Daily Beast. Max, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So was it an 8-point bump speech, you think?
Well, I'll tell you, there is a lot of ground for Biden to cover in popularity. He's been in the tank, and this is largely because I think for the first time in a while, American voters actually heard Joe Biden talk about his agenda directly to them. So much of the last year has been Republicans speaking for Democrats and telling voters what's in Build Back Better, what's in the infrastructure bill. And it's not surprising to me that when Joe Biden actually talks about this bill and tells stories and connects to people, that they say, oh, this isn't actually socialism. This is stuff we've wanted for years. So, yeah, and I'm hopeful that continues to rise.
Yeah, I see. We've had these conversations, quite often over the last year. This is what they should have been doing. Oh, I don't know. Let me check the watch. About a year ago. This is the kind of stuff that they should have been doing to get people to know what's in it, to humanize it, to make people realize, yeah, it's about making lives better. Instead, they were fighting over numbers the whole time. And that was a strategic error, I believe, on the administration's fault.
It was. And you brought up Bill Clinton, and everybody remembers Bill Clinton's "It's the economy, stupid." But what they never take away from that is that Bill Clinton got away from talking about numbers and facts and figures and huge dollar amounts and towards talking about how these things will change your life, how you're going to be able to look at your kids and tell them you have a job that can cover their schooling, that you don't have to choose between medicine and food. And we saw some of that from Joe Biden at the State of the Union, and it was incredibly powerful. Yeah. And that was the guy who beat Donald Trump in 2020. The question is, that would have been really useful. We wonder where he's been the last year with these compelling stories that, as polls show, move voters.
But isn't that the knock on Democrats as a whole? I mean, Republicans have always been narrative kind of candidates, whereas as Democrats get into the weeds and are wonky, and it's all about the facts and the figures and the numbers and being right, as opposed to having that feeling and that emotion that comes with things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes from this desire to sort of depoliticize these things, to make them appeal to everybody. But the problem is, you can talk about how this bill is going to build 100 miles of highway. What is not being told in that story is how that highway is going to bring jobs, how a family that's on food stamps is going to be self-sufficient because they're able to work on these projects, that they're going to build unions and they're going to build strong families and generational wealth. These are the things people feel right now more than ever when they feel the pinch of inflation and supply chain problems. And we need to let them know that we understand that on a very basic and very human level.
Yeah. Now, I was just reading through one of your more recent pieces over at the Daily Beast, and I hope folks will take a look at it. We'll get links out on social media on how they can take a look at it. But you said the State of the Union, highlighted Democrats' divisions. To me, I look at what he talked about. These were the things that I thought were the core tenets of being a Democrat: helping families get by, helping families lead better lives, helping the working class, investing in our country. Walk me through why you think it highlighted our divisions.
Well, and I want to point out, this seemed to upset a lot of people who felt I was attacking Joe Biden. And I actually agreed immensely with a lot of what Joe Biden said. These policies like environmental investment, child tax credit, these are core elements of the Democratic agenda and any empathy-driven agenda. My problem is these run into the same challenges Build Back Better did, is that we have Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema in the Senate. And without 60 votes, of which Republicans will provide 0, these big, bold proposals are going nowhere. And the challenge is how does Joe Biden bridge that gap? Because they're great ideas. They just don't have the support in the Senate that we need.
Yeah. Now Joe Manchin came out, immediately poured cold water all over everything. And then the next day said there are some things that he's willing to do. And my response was, well, let's drag him into the Senate. Let's get those done. Let's get what we can right now and keep working for all the other stuff, the aspirational stuff that we need. But let's get something now.
Yeah, and I think Joe Manchin sort of intellectually understands that, but can't seem to get past these walls he's built for himself. Kyrsten Sinema is even more of a wild card, does not seem connected or engaged at all to the party or at all in the interest of the platform that she signed on to as a Democrat. But yeah, these are very popular proposals. A majority of voters in Joe Manchin's state support things like child tax credit, and he knows that. So he knows there's only so far he can push this before he starts hurting himself. And I think we're reaching that point now.
Yeah, you mean the child tax credit that he said, people were just going to use to go buy drugs and booze?
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate to see Joe Manchin making real issues into a circus. Sitting with the Republicans at the State of the Union, sniping at the president as soon as he was finished speaking about how unrealistic these plans are. It doesn't speak to the moment, and it shows a remarkably petty kind of personal vendetta politics that is really below the crisis situation we're in right now.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Max Burns. Max is a columnist over at the Daily Beast. He's got a new piece out on the State of the Union. We'll get links out on social media. Also on the abortion issue. You've decided to dive in to the abortion issue because you don't think Democrats are taking a strong enough stand. You don't think the president took a strong enough stand. Why do you think? Why is that?
I think if you listen to that State of the Union where the word abortion was not used once, you would be forgiven for thinking that abortion was safe. There was no conflict going on in America, that everything's great. And the problem is abortion is under assault. We are almost certain to lose large chunks, if not all, of Roe versus Wade when the Supreme Court makes its decision later this year. And in 26 states, that means abortion will immediately vanish. But we talk about this from the podium of the House of Representatives, and Joe Biden says, the right to choose, protecting Roe versus Wade. But we're not willing to actually say what we're fighting for, and we're alone in that. Republicans have no problem saying the word abortion. They will say it on ads and on Tucker Carlson all you want. But the fact is, if Democrats aren't willing to fight on this, we're giving Republicans a gift, because when Democrats fight on abortion, we win elections. And it's that silence that's going to kill us.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of things. The messaging on the right is always much better because they do a much better job of focus group testing, think tank approving their messages, and they've got a giant megaphone for which to get it out. So it's not surprising they do a much better job. But isn't this one of those moments where you would hope that the base would then rise up and say, "Hey, this is an important issue, and we're getting out the vote anyway. We don't need to be prodded."
Yeah, and they will. And it's not just the Democratic base either. The challenge here is Republicans have every reason to want Democrats to not talk about abortion. There was a poll from Hart Research out recently that showed that when elections center on abortion as an issue, voters move to Democrats by 71 points. And that covers states as diverse as Ohio, New York, California, Nevada. I mean, this is a bipartisan situation. And that's because 31% of the Republican Party supports abortion being legal in at least some way. So actually, what Republicans are about to do goes way beyond what even their voters want and what their voters thought would happen. So these people will rise up if this happens, and there will be a march and a new political bloc that changes the dynamics of this race incredibly.
Yeah, I think most people are, at least I want to believe most people are on the camp that I'm in, which is I'm pro-safety. I want my daughters to be safe. Whatever they choose to do with their bodies in that moment is their decision. I don't want them to be forced into a back alley like their grandmother's generation would have been. I want them to be safe. And I don't want them to be hunted down, and some of the stuff that we're seeing in Texas and in other places is just insane to me. This bounty hunter nonsense, all of this craziness, and I think you're right here. Maybe because I'll tell you, it's not my issue. It's not something I'm really comfortable with talking about, but it is one of those things that I think we have to.
Yeah, and we shouldn't be afraid. I think voters are behind this issue. By some measures, 70% of Americans support some form of legal abortion. And there are people, Democrats, Republicans, I don't care who they identify as, there are people who are depending on us to preserve this right, because an unplanned pregnancy in Texas now can destroy the rest of your life, no matter how carefully you've lived and how much you've worked for what you're trying to achieve. If you're forced into a situation where you can die from having an abortion, we would not stomach another group of people having their rights so completely stripped away in broad daylight as we are now. And it's on us morally to stand up for this.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's crazy. Now, again, coming out of the State of the Union, there was so much in there that people were were happy with, thrilled with. So much that didn't get in. Was there something that you would have wanted to see the president focus on a little bit more that you think he should have?
Yeah, I was really surprised to see that criminal justice reform has vanished. That we've gone from defund to fund the police. And to be clear, defund the police was never the Democratic position. That was a position put forward by progressives that was not really given an opportunity to be discussed. But now we're saying fund the police. It's clear we're not going to make any progress on things like the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, and that this demographic is being told essentially to wait and to hope that 2022 elections go well so that we can maybe bring it back up next year. But the challenge is, beyond being a disappointment, I unfortunately understand the position Joe Biden's in on this. Republicans have spent the year trying to paint a terrifying story of an American carnage that Donald Trump alluded to in his inauguration speech. And unfortunately, we've been so afraid of being tarred as soft on crime that Democrats haven't really pushed back. And now we're in a position where we are debating this from a spot of very weak spot.
Yeah. Now, I'll be honest with you right up front. I was against the idea of defund the police. I thought it was a stupid slogan. I said the position that I believe is the right position is I support the police when they're not wrong. I think that's a common sense position. When you do the right thing, I'm behind you. You screw up, you do something wrong, you should be held accountable. I support you when you're not wrong. That should have been the answer. But as you pointed out, the right then used that whole defund the police thing to scare, white America, who has a different view of policemen. Look, I grew up in a housing project where I had a very negative view of policemen. The only time I saw a cop is he was cracking somebody in the head with a stick or they were dragging somebody away. I now live in a neighborhood where they're handing out glow sticks at Halloween, where there are neighbors. So, and then the news media you hear, the inner cities are burning and all this stuff. Even though it's not reality, it's what scares white people, and Republicans have used that masterfully.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. I think the biggest disappointment I have is that we're only now seeing that Joe Biden does understand how to talk about this issue in the language that gets us to a victory, of saying, why should we be letting these billionaires walk around, not pay their taxes? Yep. Let's tax these billionaires and use it to fund policing in a way that allows police to do their jobs, so that we can fund social services to have psychiatrists respond to psychiatric calls so police don't have to, so that we can let police focus on policing. This is a winning way to talk about this issue. And I just wonder where this conversation was in the summer when we had a real chance to actually pass this stuff.
Absolutely. I just... I got to get your thoughts on Ukraine before I let you go. This is horrible. I mean, I don't know where else to go with it. This is just an absolutely horrible thing.
No, it is. It makes me speechless. I mean, the videos, the photos that we've seen. And the one thing this shows to me is that this myth of Vladimir Putin as some great geopolitical genius playing chess while the world is playing checkers is nonsense. It's just propaganda. I mean, this invasion could not have gone worse for Russia. I don't think it's going at all the way that they expected. They're about 3 weeks away from their entire domestic airline industry shutting down for lack of parts and fuel. Their economy's on the brink of a complete collapse. I mean, the ruble is worth less than a penny at this point. I can't imagine a way that Vladimir Putin spins this, and the people in Russia are getting quite unhappy. We've even seen some organizations like Gazprom, the state gas company, say that this invasion should end. And that is a staggering show of disloyalty for a company that's essentially run by a Putin loyalist.
So do they take him out? Is that how this ends? Is Lindsey Graham right?
That's what I would be worried about. Someone was saying, Anthony Blinken was saying that he was worried about the conversations that were going on in Moscow and the Kremlin right now. I'd be worried about someone with a pistol in the defense industry putting it to Putin's head and saying, I'm here to save Russia. I mean, these are people, this is the generation of Russian leaders who came to power by deposing Gorbachev. They know how these situations play out. And that has got to be high on Putin's mind right now.
Excellent point. Max, I appreciate the time, the thoughts. Always great talking with you, my friend. Good stuff.
Thanks. Always.
Our good friend Max Byrne. Make sure you check out his work over at the Daily Beast. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. If you're just joining us, make sure you grab the podcast. Always there for you. You never miss a minute, so you don't miss great interviews like that one with Max. Let's take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk. Thanks, Max. I appreciate it, man. You too. Thanks. Day in labor history. The year was 1914. That was the day that President Woodrow Wilson signed the Siemens Act into law. The act was in part a response to the tragic sinking of the Titanic. The International Seamen's Union was demanding changes to the working conditions at sea. The job of a seaman required long times away from home and tough physical labor. The workers had few rights. The union found a friend in Senator Robert La Follette of Wisconsin. He championed a new law that set guidelines for basic safety and decent working conditions for those who sailed under the American flag. The act set the work week at a maximum of 56 hours. It established holidays for non-essential crew. The law also improved working conditions by setting standards for cleanliness and safety on board. It abolished the practice of jailing seamen that tried to desert the ship. It required that seamen be paid half of their wages during the voyage. The practice had been to withhold wages to ensure the workers did not desert the ships at port. The new law also required that 16 square feet of space be given to each worker for sleeping. It also mandated that ships should have adequate lifeboats. These last two provisions angered the ship owners because it meant there would be less space on board for cargo. Finally, the law gave seamen the right to organize into unions. Senator La Follette described the negative reaction of the owners to his law by observing, already the masters of the seas are beginning to threaten dire vengeance. The act was a major victory for the rights of labor on the high seas. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. You got a thought, question, comment, something on your mind. Joe Biden did this. You know, I love hearing the right-wing idiots going, Joe Biden did all this stuff. You look at the gas prices there. Someone's taking stickers and putting it all over the gas pump. Joe Biden did this. And Biden didn't have anything to do with it. But today, the job number's out. Non-farm payrolls grew 678,000 for the month of February. That's a massive increase over what was expected, which was just 440,000. Still a rather hefty number, but 678, good number. Unemployment rate down to 3.8%. Now you go, hey, but Rick, there aren't as many people in the workforce, and you're right. We need more people to get back into the workforce, which is why, again, as the president pointed out, childcare, big thing. Could use some help there. Oh, by the way, we could also use workers to be able to join and form unions for better wages, hours, conditions. Yes, because here's the thing. We're talking about 678,000 jobs. I don't know if those are good jobs or not. No one's told me if those are good family-sustaining wage jobs, or those are just millions of crappy jobs that we've had that haven't returned. And then you hear people going, well, I can't hire somebody. Well, yeah, you're not going to hire someone at minimum wage right now. That's not going to happen. Nobody's working for $7 1/4. Not going to happen. But, it doesn't stop, Republican politicians from whining about all the job openings out there because nobody wants to work. Yeah, nobody wants to work for $7 1/4. You're right. You got that one, genius. Congratulations there, Dumby. but it is what it is. Now, here's the thing. We keep hearing about inflation. Oh, my gosh, inflation. Inflation. CEO pay, according to the Wall Street Journal, the official newspaper of the investor class. Inflation for CEOs, not a problem. Because they're saying, the inflation rate is up about 7.5%, right? CEO pay went up 16.5%. Your wages, working class folks' wages, 4.7. So yeah, inflation is hurting working people, not hurting CEOs at all. In fact, the CEO of Kroger, who makes almost 1,000 times the average worker there, got a huge kick up in pay during the pandemic and over this period of time. So, a little inflation's good. We get to raise prices a little bit. It's good for the bottom line. It's the way we can squeeze people, get another buck or so out of them. Jeez. I can't believe that actually happens. But anyway, median CEO pay now up to $14.2 million. CFO pay up to almost $5 million. That, again, according to the good folks at the newspaper of the investor class, the Wall Street Journal. And at the same time, the reality is workers' wages, inflation adjusted down 2.4% because, hey, we're working for that. Now, we keep hearing about, the inflation's killing things. And I've said from the beginning, a couple of things at play here. It's not Joe Biden's fault. Sorry, you can whine and you can complain and you can point fingers and you can have cute little stickers. It's not Joe Biden's fault. Those CEOs who've been lining their pockets, their fault. Corporate America, their fault. Greedy, opportunistic, capitalistic corporate America, absolutely their fault. Because there's nobody holding them accountable. Because we keep hearing this frame, and even I've said it. Because look, I bought a car last year. We bought a Jeep. I bought a Jeep because the engine blew. And I decided, well, it's a time, I've had it a long time, it's time to buy another one. And when I went to go buy it, I got no haggle room. There was no way. And, my wife has been with me to buy cars in the past. I do really well in negotiating. I get it. There was no wiggle room. Actually, I got $500 off, but you go, that's just I'm going to try not to insult you too much. But the reality is, again, according to the Wall Street Journal, the average profit for a car for the car dealers in 2015 was $1,399, 16, $1,347, 17, $1,327, 18, $1,329. In 21, it was $3,723. Damn near, 3 times. So again, that inflation, it's greed. It's them putting the money in their pocket, taking it out of yours. In fact, my Jeep, I found out that the people who make my Jeep sold 3% more vehicles than they went last time, and their profits went up more than 100%. Let's talk greedy capitalists. Those are the folks we should be looking at. Just a thought. Anyway, if you missed any of the program, grab the podcast. We'll take a quick break. Right back. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
We're done talking about infrastructure weeks. We're now talking about an infrastructure decade.
Biden touts infrastructure and clean energy in State of the Union address. Majority of Americans willing to shoulder higher gas prices to help Ukraine. Plus, another big oil giant pulls out of Russia.
Are they American?
Yes.
Well, God bless America. All of those stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Germany shutting down the pipeline led former Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev to tweet about the high-priced natural gas they'll now face. Welcome to the new world where Europeans would soon have to pay 2,000 euros per 1,000 cubic meters. Whoa, that is a lot. Or a little. The metric system means nothing to me.
Ditto. this is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, the tragic, terrible, awful impacts of what we're seeing in Ukraine are bad enough. Add to that now the economic impacts around the world.
Yes, indeed. Although it may ultimately hit Russia the hardest, its oil and gas industry is getting pummeled. Oil giant ExxonMobil announced that it is joining Shell, BP, and other oil majors in announcing it will exit its role in a major Russian oil and gas project and cease any new investments in the country following Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Well, that took long enough for Exxon.
Yep, and Norway's $1 trillion sovereign wealth fund, the world's largest, will also divest its Russian assets.
Ouch, that's going to leave a mark.
And the Nord Stream 2 pipeline is now dead. The Russian-owned operator declared bankruptcy and let go all of its employees.
Sad.
Here in the U.S., the Biden administration says it will tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to ease gasoline prices. Lawmakers from both parties are pushing the White House to ban imports of Russian oil. But industry analysts say it may be unnecessary because Russia's oil exports are already taking a major hit from the oil company's exit.
Also sad.
A new Reuters poll found a majority of Americans, nearly 60%, said that paying more for fuel and gas because of the crisis in Ukraine was worthwhile to defend another democratic country. That's up 10 points from last week.
So nearly 60. The other 40 are just, they want cheaper gas, no matter how many people have to die for it.
Russia's war on Ukraine was a major focus of President Biden's wide-ranging State of the Union address on Tuesday, but he spoke only briefly on climate change and environmental justice. It was a missed opportunity to inform Americans about the necessity of swift climate action in the wake of a new UN report this week that climate impacts are more severe than expected and governments are running out of time to adapt to worse effects to come. Biden instead touted the infrastructure law, the largest infrastructure investment in U.S. history, and the jobs that come with it.
We're done talking about infrastructure weeks. We're now talking about an infrastructure decade. It's going to transform America.
Biden didn't mention the Build Back Better Act that was sabotaged by Democratic Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Instead, he touted executive actions he's taken to rebuild domestic manufacturing and a flood of new projects from the infrastructure law.
We'll create good jobs for millions of Americans, modernizing roads, airports, ports, waterways, all across America. And we'll do it to withstand the devastating effects of climate change and promote environmental justice. We'll build a national network of 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. Begin to replace the poisonous lead pipes so every child, every American has clean water to drink at home and at school.
Biden also called on Congress to pass elements of the stalled or dead Build Back Better Act with investments that would boost the economy and lower long-term inflation and costs for working families.
I call it building a better America. Let's cut energy costs for families, an average of $500 a year by combating climate change. Let's provide an investment tax credits to weatherize your home and your business, to be energy efficient and get a tax credit for it. Double America's clean energy production in solar, wind, and so much more. Lower the price of electric vehicles, saving another $80 a month that you're not going to have to pay at the pump. Folks,
surprisingly, Biden didn't mention that last week the Interior Department's first offshore wind lease sale shattered records for offshore energy development. It was the nation's highest grossing offshore energy lease sale in history of all types of energy, including oil and gas. The New York and New Jersey region is setting up to be a wind energy manufacturing hub, showing how a clean energy and climate agenda can boost domestic manufacturing and create jobs while tackling climate change.
Nice. Very nice indeed. You got to give credit to Joe Biden. He's still trying. And, of course, Joe Manchin is still going to be blocking him. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank-approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as we said yesterday, the Russian oligarchs have lost in excess of $80 billion. The nation's credit status is junk. You had a Russian billionaire put $1 million bounty on the head of Putin. Already the boats are being seized. There's a task force here in the U.S. being set up to seize Russian assets across the country and across the globe. You're seeing all kinds of, very unhappy rich people. And this is where, maybe this is where Lindsey Graham is going to hopefully be right. Somebody will take him out, because the rich people, as I've been saying all along, they don't like to be inconvenienced, not even a little bit. And here to share some thoughts on what's going on over in Ukraine, and from a military perspective, just how bad this is. I've asked our good friend Rich Ojeda to come talk with us. Rich is the national spokesperson for No Dem Left Behind. Rich, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, I appreciate you, bringing me on.
So let's walk through this. Lindsey Graham came out and said, someone take this guy out. That's the only way this is going to end. You see these stories coming out about these rich guys getting their boats, repossessed. You see the money evaporating. You see the stock market there closed down for the 5th day in a row. Rich people ain't going to take this long, Rich.
You know what? Vladimir Putin doesn't care about the average person on the ground. But when you start messing with the people who actually own the purses, they're the ones that have the real power, and they're losing billions upon billions of dollars. They're losing their yachts, their fancy cars, their planes. I'm going to tell you, they are not happy right now. And Vladimir Putin could care less what the average citizen has to say, but he has to stop what he's doing to listen to these oligarchs. And I believe that they are about ready to put this thing to an end, because they are absolutely being preyed upon all over the globe right now. And, if you're talking about anybody that has the ability to do something, it's them. I always tell people all the time that Bernie Madoff, it was a time when the filthy rich, the corporations have always taken from the average citizen. But when Bernie Madoff stole from the rich, they buried him.
Yep.
Because you don't do that. And right now, these Russian oligarchs are losing everything, and you don't do that. Yep. And I'm telling you, they're not very happy with Vladimir Putin right now.
Are you surprised at how difficult a time the Russian military, Putin's death machine, has had? From reports of going into Ukraine, I mean, the stalled convoys, the not having food and fuel. Are you surprised by the reports coming out?
Well, when they first took over Crimea and we got to see all their vehicles, I saw T-62s, and I was like, really? I mean, these people are showing up in tuna cans. And right now, I will tell you, I've got a lot of buddies of mine that are in the logistician side of the house in the United States military. One of them is a full bird colonel that we talk often. And, this is an embarrassment. I mean, here we thought that they were the second largest military on the face of the earth. They've got all this amazing equipment, and they've got nukes. But at the end of the day, that's all they got is the nukes. Because if you can't even invade your next door neighbor without running out of gas within 40 miles out of crossing the border, you're not projecting forces the way that you should be able to protect forces. And I will tell you that has absolutely shown the world that Russia is not all that. They got nuclear weapons and they got some madmen behind it. But as far as force on force, this is an embarrassment. And the people of Ukraine are eating them alive. I mean, these people are running out of gas. They're abandoning their vehicle. The people in Ukraine are either walking up to them and destroying them, or they're hooking them up to their tractors and towing them back into the cities. So let that sink in.
No, and this is, look, this isn't going the way I'm sure Putin planned, and I'm sure he didn't plan on making Zelensky a real life action hero. I mean, because I got to tell you, I look at this guy and wow, I mean, this is what movies are made out of.
Yeah, I said all the time. I said, look, we got to stop electing actors and people like that, because they end up screwing things up. And then we have a President Zelensky. This guy is showing what leadership really is. He's actually out there with the troops. I mean, this is amazing. And I'm going to tell you, one of the reasons why Russia basically had their back broke in Afghanistan was because of the surface to air missiles, because of Stingers, things like that. Now everybody in Ukraine's walking around with a javelin, and these things are absolutely as deadly as you can get. And they are laying waste to the Russian equipment. And I don't know if the numbers are accurate, but right now Ukraine is putting out some numbers, and I mean, they are destroying, billions upon billions of dollars worth of equipment has already been destroyed. The equivalent of our Humvee. They've already killed almost 1,000 of those. We're talking 300 tanks. You're talking helicopters. They're just absolutely going to town on Russia, and they're just the small nation of Ukraine with a very minimal army, and they're kicking ass.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the weekend in Ukraine that I think Putin thought it was going to be, and then coming back and having parades and kissing babies and all of that stuff. But here's the thing, and you're the military person here. What's the point of this? What was to be gained? Because I don't think Ukraine was ever going to fully come along. This seemed like it could have been another kind of Afghanistan situation, and still could be. I mean, this still may be, but I don't see the end game here. What was the end point?
Now, this is going to end up being another Afghanistan for Russia. But I believe that Vladimir Putin realizes that the people in Russia are struggling. He wants everyone to think that Russia is Moscow and St. Petersburg. Those are really nice, beautiful cities. But if you drive 5 minutes outside of the center of those cities, all you start to see is poverty everywhere. And Russia is an impoverished nation. Vladimir Putin is worth about $200 billion. But the people are absolutely struggling with poverty, and they know that. And Vladimir Putin knows that the people are absolutely starting to realize that he's worth $200 billion while they're barely able to put food on their table. So what he's done is he's tried to tell them, hey, we're going to go back to the days of old, the days when we were great. And, what he wants to do is he wants to go back and take those places. He wants to take back Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia. He wants Ukraine. He wants Romania. He wants Poland. He wants Bulgaria. He wants those places. He wants to be able to go back to the way that it was. And it's not going to go back there because those places have tasted the freedom that didn't, they never got under when the USSR was in power, and they don't want it. And it's like Moldova. Moldova has already requested to be a part of the United Nations. Right now, it looks like Finland and Sweden are about ready to become part of NATO. That's what's going to happen. And Vladimir Putin has failed miserable. And he thought he was going to run in there. He thought he was going to take Ukraine in about 7 days. And then he thought everybody else was going to get scared and roll over. Now, what everybody has saw, let me tell you something. He'll get his butt whooped in every country he goes to.
So let me ask you on this front: does he pull out, or does he get killed before he does it? None of us know, but is this a scenario where the only way this ends is he's taken out, or does he come to his senses at some point and pull back with some minor kind of victory that he can claim?
I worry about Vladimir Putin because I don't know. He always seemed like he's a stable kind of guy. But, at the end of the day, the only victory for him, and I hate to say this, would be going for the nukes. And at the end of the day, nobody wins when you go for nukes. There is no win. It's over with. But I think that, right now he's starting to realize that he is an embarrassment on the global stage right now. I really believe that what's going to happen is that these oligarchs who are losing money, left and right, are going to finally say, look, he did this and we're the ones that are struggling and we need to put an end to this. And I'm sure they're probably talking to some of the generals and they're saying either this guy retires or we retire him. And I honestly believe that that's probably a topic of conversation because once again, they don't care about the average citizen. He doesn't care that the average citizen and their rubles have turned into nothing. But that does affect those oligarchs and they're not going to put up with this.
Yeah, you're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Rich Ojeda. Rich is the national spokesperson for No Dems Left Behind, also a career military guy. My go-to expert on anything war and military. Are you surprised here? Look, we're about the same age, grew up around the same time. When you think of the Soviet Union, you think of Russia, you have that visceral reaction, that kind of fear of getting the old band back together, of a KGB officer wanting to reclaim Mother Russia. Are you surprised at the number of people here who are not anymore really openly siding with Putin today, but at the front were, our former president saying how smart he was, how he's a genius, and all that stuff, and how there are people, tweeting out, "I stand with Putin." How you got George Papadopoulos, tweeting out today that, Zelensky left the country, and that he should immediately do something. Are you surprised at the number of apologists and people who seem to be carrying Putin's water?
Yeah, I think it's sickening. I mean, at the end of the day, I think everybody should realize the reason why Donald Trump loved Vladimir Putin is Vladimir Putin used him as nothing more than a puppet. I honestly believe that the conversations that they had went something like this. "Hey there, Donnie, you know what you ought to do? You ought to, basically remove yourselves from the Open Skies Treaty and also the Paris Climate Accord. You don't need that stuff." And Donald Trump's not smart enough to realize that he was being played, and he went for it. And there's people that are waking up every single day in this country, and Donald Trump is catching a lot of flack for his stance, just like you got Tucker Carlson actually saying, "I support, Russia." These are people that are absolute traitors, and they don't deserve to have a microphone. And to be honest with you, our country should deal with them. If you don't like it, they can hit the bricks. Yeah. But I definitely don't think that they deserve the right to have the microphone that they do, to be spewing the garbage that they spew. Right now we are watching a bully try to force his way upon somebody. And you know what? It's always great every once in a while when that one person stands up to the bully and knocks them on their ass. And right now, Zelensky is that guy.
No, you're absolutely right. I said from the beginning, and I've taken some heat from the left, because how can you how can you get it all, NATO and all this other stuff? I'm going, look, I view this very simply. One rich bully has sent poor working class Russian kids into Ukraine to kill poor and working class people there. This is the Smedley Butler, rich people get rich, poor people get dead, perfect model. This has to stop, and Putin is the a-hole in this whole thing.
You are spot on right, and you're absolutely right. They're sending poor people to their deaths, basically, so he can try to, act like he's going to reclaim greatness again, and he's not. He showed his hand. Everybody now knows that they're not exactly what he wanted everyone to think they were. And I'll tell you, this is a colossal failure. The equipment that they're losing and the capability. I mean, you're getting lost. You're running out of food. You're running out of fuel. I mean, they got a 40-mile convoy and it's already getting picked apart. So, I mean, come on. I mean, where's your tacticians here? Because I'll tell you what, none of them have graduated from a command general staff college. I'll tell you that.
Zelensky is asking for a no-fly zone. Should NATO grant one?
Yeah, I think so. Look, at the end of the day, Vladimir Putin is going to try to threaten people with nuclear weapons. But at the end of the day, a bully needs to be put in his place. And like I said, I don't think that the Russian oligarchs, I don't think that the generals in Russia really want it all to end today. And that's right there is literally the only way Vladimir Putin can claim victory on anything right now is if he does that. And I don't think he's willing to do that. And I don't think the people around here are willing to allow him to do that. So we just have to hope that cooler minds prevail. But I tell you, he's shown his hand, and it's not a winning hand.
My concern about the no-fly zone, and help me if you think I'm wrong, is right now I think the world sees what Putin is doing as the bully beating up on basically a almost defenseless country. I think the people in Russia see it as their country beating up on virtually defenseless people that look like them. The second you introduce NATO, the second you introduce a U.S. fighter or NATO troops into this, doesn't that dynamic then change? And wouldn't he then gather support based on now we're not fighting Ukraine and the people who look like you, but now it's NATO and somebody else, which is why I was concerned about the thing that happened in Sweden the other day, where they went into Swedish airspace. I thought that was kind of hoping for some kind of escalation as a distraction.
But we don't want that. We don't want that. I'm completely fine with putting people in the skies, not with weaponry, but I'm talking about just to keep your eyes. It's like the Open Skies Treaty, and that right there was allowing people that wasn't armed to fly the skies. Basically just to let everybody know we're watching you, we see what you're doing. But at the end of the day, if this is the kind of stuff that is going to make Vladimir Putin a pariah across the globe, and if they keep pushing this the way they do, what's going to happen is they're going to be kept in a box, and that's as far as they're going to go.
Yeah.
We already know that they're already talking about war crimes that have taken place, and we've saw a couple of them. So especially right now, if they're actually attacking a nuclear facility, that is a war crime. So there's going to come a time when Vladimir Putin's going to have to be held accountable. And once again, we have to hope that these oligarchs and people like that at the top are willing to realize to say it's time to cut ties with him, because none of them are going to win. The Russian oligarchs are going to lose everything as long as they continue going down this path. And I really believe that's what's going to stop this.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I'm actually looking forward to that. I want to make sure, I want to see where all this Russian money is, where all this criminal money is, and I want to see where it's gone here. Because I've been saying, look, RT shut down here in the U.S. Why Russian television was allowed to operate a propaganda network here in the U.S. is beyond me. But I want to know where that Russian money was going to fund. Maybe, who knows, that Fox channel over there. Maybe one of those cable networks over there that propped up with a whole bunch of right-wing propaganda. Maybe that gun group that runs around with their gun fetish stuff. I'd like to know where that oligarch money goes. Here, I'd like to have that investigation.
Yeah, the governor of West Virginia has come out and he's outlawed Russian vodka across the state. But he also owns the Greenbrier, and people that work at the Greenbrier have always said that Russians show up on the weekends and they all gamble and they always win, and nobody says nothing. So I actually said to I put this out for the governor, and I said, put your money where your mouth is. Are you going to stop the Russians from coming to your Greenbrier and gambling? But I haven't heard anything in response.
So let's change topics a little bit here, Rich, because the president gave his State of the Union address the other day. I wanted to get your thoughts on how you think the president did. His polling numbers jumped 8 points. He's up to 47%. Look, anything to get up is a good thing. Curious your thoughts on the spiel.
I thought that he did a phenomenal job. I didn't watch it while it happened, and then afterwards I got on and I watched it. And I thought everything that he was saying was spot on. I feel that he is focusing on the right things that need to be addressed. I think he's doing a wonderful job. I mean, a lot of people have to understand this guy has been hitting home runs. He had to build the infrastructure to vaccinate this country, which he got about 70% of the people vaccinated. There was a time when all the ships were stuck out there and everybody was screaming, you're not going to have Christmas because everything is out to sea because they can't get through the ports. What did he do? He put $100 fine on every Connex for every 24 hours they're at the port, and everything got moving again. He's already called for the release of 50,000 barrels of oil to lower the gas prices, and he's just done it again with people in Europe, because once again, we know that the gas prices are going to go up because of this war with Russia. So it seems like all he is always doing is fixing the problems that come at him. And you know what? As a president, this guy has been thrown everything at him. And I think that he's doing a phenomenal job. I loved his speech. I thought it was absolutely unacceptable that Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Trainwreck Green started heckling him when he was talking about veterans that lose their life due to burn pits, to include his son that died from brain cancer, who actually lived very close to a burn pit when he was in Iraq. I think that it's time for those two to be ran out of Washington, D.C., and it shouldn't take an election to get rid of some of these people. These people are not good people. The Matt Gaetz, the Jim Justice, the Marjorie Trainwreck Greens, and the Lauren Boeberts, they are what's wrong with America, and they need to go.
Oh, they are the Republican Party. I mean, sadly, if things are to change and if Republicans want to change the view of their party, those folks have to go. Come back to the sane line. We want you to come back and join us. I'll tell you what I liked about the speech is it was positive. Generation, the generation that he's from, get up, go to work, put your pants on, do the job, and don't pat yourself on the back. Just get up and keep going, keep doing it, solve problems, and get to work. That's what I liked about it. It was positive. It was let's get to work. It was that simple. It was good stuff. But Rich, I appreciate the time as always. Great talking with you. Keep up the great work, man.
Anytime, brother. Always love being on your show, man.
Good stuff. Our good friend Rich Ojeda, national spokesperson for No Dems Left Behind. We'll get links out. I take a look at the stuff that the great work that they do there at No Dems Left Behind. This is again one of those moments where you look at where we are as a country. We need the kind of leadership that comes from a Joe Biden, and I'm thrilled at this moment. Now, I did get a quick email. Someone didn't quite get what I was saying in the last hour about car prices, and I want to quick clarify. Biden keeps getting hit over the inflation and hit badly, and we know that the CEO pay has gone through the roof. We know that, the investor class has done extraordinarily well. We know corporate profits have done extraordinarily well. But one of the frames that keeps being thrown out at us is, well, the car companies are struggling because they can't get the chips, and there's all this stuff out there. And as I said, look, I went and bought a car, and I didn't get to negotiate on the price at all. There was no haggling. And the Wall Street Journal came out with their numbers. And they went and they looked at the average profit per car for the years 2015 through 2020. And what they came out with is in those years, the average profit per car was somewhere around $1,300. 2020, it went up to $1,800. Okay, that's a reasonable return on a car. In 2021, now remember, things are tough. In 2021, the average profit per car was $3,700, over $3,700, more than triple what it had been all of the other years. So you go, but wait, hold on. The inflation. Well, the inflation was greed. The inflation was these dealers are going, hey, everyone knows there's a shortage. We got an opportunity here. We got an opportunity to limit supply, because understand, the people who made my Jeep and make Ram trucks and the other lines, they sold just 3% more vehicles than they did the year before, but their profits were up more than 100%. Why is that? Because, well, there's a shortage and they held things back. And the media picked up on it and pushed it, so we got screwed, man. And we consumers have been getting screwed all along. But this is what corporate America does. It's what they get away with. So when they say, it's because those workers are asking for higher wages, bollocks. It's not what it is at all. It's good old-fashioned CEO greed. It's padding the bottom line. It's making the investors wealthier. It's about stealing from you and giving to them. It's not about right or left. It's not about Joe Biden or Donald Trump. It's about Wall Street against the rest of us. It's the wealthy and the 1% against everyone else. It is that simple. Just my thoughts. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you get the podcast. Make sure you take the program with you wherever you go. Share with your friends. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1914. That was the day that President Woodrow Wilson signed the Siemens Act into law. The act was in part a response to the tragic sinking of the Titanic. The International Seamen's Union was demanding changes to the working conditions at sea. The job of a seaman required long times away from home and tough physical labor. The workers had few rights. The union found a friend in Senator Robert La Follette of Wisconsin. He championed a new law that set guidelines for basic safety and decent working conditions for those who sailed under the American flag. The act set the work week at a maximum of 56 hours. It established holidays for non-essential crew. The law also improved working conditions by setting standards for cleanliness and safety on board. It abolished the practice of jailing seamen that tried to desert the ship. It required that seamen be paid half of their wages during the voyage. The practice had been to withhold wages to ensure the workers did not desert the ships at port. The new law also required that 16 square feet of space be given to each worker for sleeping. It also mandated that ships should have adequate lifeboats. These last two provisions angered the ship owners because it meant there would be less space on board for cargo. Finally, the law gave seamen the right to organize into unions. Senator LaFollette described the negative reaction of the owners to his law by observing, already the masters of the seas are beginning to threaten dire vengeance. The act was a major victory for the rights of labor on the high seas. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Mega investor Warren Buffett once held a big portfolio of daily and weekly newspapers, and he specialized in squeezing out competitors so each held a local monopoly. Then he'd chop staff and news content, letting him glean annual profit margins above 30%. But alas for poor Warren, along came the internet, allowing people to root around for free to find local information missing from his hollowed-out papers. They began losing readers, advertising, and profits. So, in 2020, Buffett sold out his entire portfolio. But rather than concede that maybe his slash-and-burn profit maximization approach had produced inferior products, the Oracle of Omaha, as Wall Street had labeled him, blasted the whole idea of local newspapers as dinosaurs. They're toast, he proclaimed. But wait, your oracleness. When done right, local publications both chronicle and help shape a community story. And that's a social benefit that's as valuable and as marketable as ever. It's not that people have given up on local news, but that corporate-owned papers did. They're not local, not newsy, and not of, by and far, the workaday people in our communities. For example, nearly every corporate daily publishes a business section, which mostly amounts to yesterday's stock prices, corporate press releases, and syndicated filler. Does even 1% of the population read that stuff? Meanwhile, how about economic news of interest to the great majority of locals who are workaday families? Where's the regular section that digs into the wages, workplace conditions, and other real-life issues that confront this majority on a daily basis? This is Jim Hightower saying the relevant indicator of the well-being of nearly every American family is not the Dow Jones average, but the Doug Jones average. How are Doug and Donna doing? That's news that would sell paper.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Yeah, as we talked about a couple of days ago, sadly, the vast majority of congressional seats across the country not competitive. In fact, the one report said only about 27 of the 337 that were officially in place at the time the report came out were actually competitive. We've seen more states, like my state of Pennsylvania right now, they've finally gotten some maps all done, certified, ready to go. But I look at my former state, my home state, where I was born and raised, my home. Crazy. What is going on in OH10? How insane have they gone since I've left? They still don't have maps, probably no real path to maps, and possibly everybody being arrested, which might not actually be a bad thing. Maybe if we lock them all up, do what I suggested from the beginning, have a lottery for a third grade class to draw the map with crayons, we could actually get something done. But here to share some thoughts on all of the chaos and insanity going on in the great state of Ohio, I've asked Rachael Coyle to come talk with us. Rachael is a communications director with Innovation Ohio. She's also with the group Equal Districts Ohio. Equaldistricts.com is their website. Rachael, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So am I getting this right? No maps?
No maps. And by our count, they have drawn 3 unconstitutional versions of the State House maps and 2 unconstitutional versions of the congressional maps at this point. So we'll see what comes next.
Now, as I understand, and again, we've been talking about this for a while, because Ohio is such a weird place that the voters went to the polls recently and said, hey, we would like fair, ungerrymandered maps. We would like something, reflective of we the people. We would like, something competitive. We would like, a reflection of us in our, we don't want you picking us. We want fair. And this, I don't think, is what they wanted, is it?
Absolutely not. And the court has said that now several times too, that voters want the maps to reflect the breakdown of Ohio. So Ohio votes a little bit more Republican than Democrat, about 54% Republican. So the map should show that. Republicans would still have the majority, but it would be closer to how the voters actually vote year to year. And even the folks who are drawing these maps are uncomfortable with drawing themselves a slightly smaller majority. So the Supreme Court has repeatedly rejected both the congressional and the state house maps. We have gotten to the point now where the court is so unhappy that they're looking at potentially holding the commissioners, which includes the governor of Ohio, in contempt, which can include lots of fun penalties like jail time or fines or lots of loss of law licenses, anything like that.
Well, that would be great. So, but who would arrest the governor? Isn't like the governor the top guy?
That's a fun logistical question that a lot of people have been asking themselves. So the general assumption is that the governor would not end up actually getting arrested, even though he could be. But they'll probably end up doing something to force the commissioners, the Republican commissioners, to actually draw those maps. Maybe they'll force them to sit in the hearing room until they come to an agreement, like kids.
Sit in the corner with the dunce cap on. Can we do that? I mean, because this is what it seems like. I mean, because as you pointed out, nobody is saying that the map should be drawn in a way that Republicans lose control. It's only that they shouldn't be drawing maps where they have absolute and total control. Because as I was reading a couple of the stories on it, as you pointed out, Ohio is a 54-46 state on the voter registration front, but the map that they've put out gives Republicans a 10-3 advantage in congressional seats. I don't know in what world a 54-46 ballot gets you 10-3. I don't know where that happens.
Yep, and it's right now under Ohio's maps, which were gerrymandered 10 years back. The Republicans control a supermajority of both chambers at the state house. So basically, they can override anything that the governor vetoes. They have 75% of the seats in Congress. That does not at all reflect Ohio. But they're not going back. They don't want to go back down to what would be a normal majority that reflects how they actually, how many votes they actually get. And it's just been really frustrating to watch, especially like you said, given those laws that Ohioans passed just a few years ago, making it really clear what we want, and they're refusing to do it.
Yeah, and the weird thing is I've been watching Ohio for a while. Like I said, I grew up there, but back when I lived in Ohio, they were saying we had 2 really good senators, John Glenn and Howard Metzenbaum, and they were good, solid Democratic votes, and they weren't too crazy. And even when they did go, kind of to the right, Voinovich wasn't horrible. He was bad, wasn't horrible. Now you've gone completely off the rails with some of these folks. And I would argue it's because of this gerrymandering, because you keep getting the crazy of the crazy of the crazy, and there's no real competition on ideas, which is why I think Ohio's got so much corruption and so much, insanity going on. I mean, no wonder so many of my friends who I talk to in Ohio going, they're all crooks, throw up their hands and don't even want to participate, which I might add is mission accomplished for Republicans.
Oh, yeah. When you control literally every branch of government with a supermajority, you don't have to listen to anybody else. You don't have to take opinions. You don't have to listen to people who tell you things you're going to do are too extreme or don't make logical sense. You can do whatever you want. No checks and balances like we all learned in 7th grade. None of that exists in a supermajority state. And it's caused us to go far more extreme than any Republicans that I know are.
Yeah, no, and that's interesting. Some of the arguments that I've heard, some of the arguments are that, Yeah, the language says, this, that we want, compact and contiguous. We want all these parts of it, but we didn't really mean it when we wrote it. In fact, the guy who claims he wrote the bill said, well, yeah, we wrote that, but that's not what we meant, which I find, convenient.
Yes, their first legal argument was that a whole section of the Constitution that voters put in there was aspirational, but not actually law. It was just something you should try to get to, but if you couldn't do it, that's okay too. And the whole section they said was aspirational was the part that said it had to reflect how Ohioans actually vote, that 54%.
That's crazy. Now, you don't have districts. So let me ask the obviously the most important question. Elections are coming up.
Yep.
Who's going to run in, no districts? How do you know who's running for what or where?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we are now at a point, the primary election are coming up, and the state has to send the overseas and the military ballots here in like 2 weeks. And we still don't have districts for the state house or for Congress. And we've got a war going on overseas. We've got folks whose voices should be more powerful than ever right now, who may end up getting ballots that are incomplete and not getting to vote in those districts, or we don't actually know what's going to happen because this is so unprecedented.
It's just insane. And look, if you're a candidate, I can't imagine. Look, especially if, well, let me put it this way. If you're a candidate pursuing an incumbent, I can't imagine. If you're the Democrats trying to put up a candidate to run again, oh, wait a second, I now know why this is going on, because it's almost impossible to run a candidate against an incumbent. So the power of incumbency here is magnified that much more. Or am I missing something?
Oh, no, I've had friends who are trying to run for office, and they are literally sitting up watching the TV late at night, seeing which lines are going to be drawn to see which district they're going to end up in the next day. It's changing week to week. They had to file petition signatures for people who may or may not end up being their constituents. It is pure chaos. And like you mentioned earlier, the Republicans are doing that on purpose. They're hoping people lose focus. They're hoping people just get overwhelmed and stop paying attention, and that they can drag this out to the point where they just end up with the maps they want.
See, did you ever see the movie Brewster's Millions with Richard Pryor?
I did. Yeah.
He ran the campaign of none of the above.
Yeah.
My mind is going to a place where you go, anyone who's in office right now who didn't get this done, none of the above. All of them should go. And it should be nonpartisan. It should be clearly you're incapable of doing your job. Clearly you're incapable of governing, because Republicans have told us for years they don't believe in government. They don't believe government can work. They don't believe government should do anything. And then they do exactly what they're doing here in Ohio, which is, well, nothing. I think they should all be voted out on this issue alone. I don't care what else you stand for. You didn't do your job, you're fired. Here's where Donald Trump could come into handy. He could bring back his "you're fired" line and get rid of all of them.
I definitely agree with you that the folks who voted and wrote the map should be kicked out. I do want to give a shout out to the two poor Democratic commissioners who are holding it down there. There's 5 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and the 2 Dems have always voted against the maps. And interestingly, actually wanted to say, last week we had one of the Republican commissioners also vote against the maps, starting to wonder if maybe he was worried about going to jail or getting held in contempt by the court, because he finally decided to vote with those Dems and vote against the most recent version of the maps.
It's just absolutely crazy. And you know what it's about. It's about absolute power. And as they say about absolute power, it corrupts absolutely. And this is just, again, another example, which is why I think people get so frustrated with our political system. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Rachael Coyle. Rachael is the communications director for Innovation Ohio, their website, innovationohio.org. She's also with the group Equal Districts. Make sure you check out their website, equaldistricts.com, on the things that are going on there in Ohio. But, here's the other part of this, and what's kind of frustrating. There's got to be a path forward. And other states have figured this out. Even here in Pennsylvania, we finally got to some maps, and they're actually pretty decent. They're not horrible. I've come up with the idea that if our elected leaders can't do it, nor do I think they ever should be able to do it, maybe a third grade class with some crayons and a map. Maybe we go that route, or an independent commission of some part. Is there a way forward in this? Because this has got to be the breaking point. This has got to be the point where people go, clearly, you're screwing this up. We've got to take this back.
The crazy thing is that these are the laws that we thought were that fix a couple years ago. We voted these new laws into the Constitution thinking that this would help end the rigging of the lines. And so we're going to have to look now after this process clearly has some issues that need to be fixed, going to have to look at how that can be fixed. Maybe it's another ballot initiative, which sounds exhausting. Maybe it's literally just voting all these folks out if we're ever able to do that and starting over. But I don't know. It's crazy in Ohio in a way that I think other states haven't seen, because we're seeing this violation of the laws that we thought were the solution before.
Yeah. Now, Pennsylvania, the state Supreme Court has the final say. And it's one of those things where you go, maybe is that the route? Is that an option where the state Supreme Court may say, you know what? Clearly, you're not going to be able to do this. We, as a matter of law, have to make sure that something's there. Is that an option in Ohio? I know there's been talk of impeaching the Chief Justice at some point, but is that an option?
So under the law right now, the Supreme Court cannot pick the final map for us. They also can't draw the map for us, but they can say, here are some examples. Here are a list of things that would make up a constitutional map, which is what they've been doing. So now we've reached a point where they have to try and be creative to force this redistricting commission made up entirely of politicians who have a stake in the process to draw those maps. And it's very interesting. It's a bipartisan majority of Supreme Court justices. There's a Republican justice siding with the Democrats every time to say that these maps are unconstitutional. So this isn't a party thing. This is a super majority of one party has just gotten into their heads with this power and are not keen to let any of it go.
It's nuts. And as my mind is churning here, I'm going, how do you get people to act in the right direction? And I love the idea of throwing them all in jail. I'll throw them all in one giant cell. I'll have one restroom facility, all of them in there. You get, bread and water. That's it. Maybe a vitamin to help you get through. And you don't get out until we get something that looks like the state. Not a 10-3 map. I would argue nothing worse than, I don't know what, 7-6. 7-6
is what we're calling for, yeah. And yes, so we were very close actually last week to the court forcing these commissioners to sit in a room together until they wrote the maps like kids. But then they passed another set of maps the night before that was supposed to happen, so that now the court is forced to rule on those maps again. So they're pushing, they're kicking the can down the road, they're waiting as long as they possibly can for that day when they get forced to be dragged in front of the court and do their work, do their jobs.
Yeah, see, now I'm of the mindset, and I know gerrymandering is an ugly word, and I've had a whole bunch of people say, oh, no, we never. I go, I'm not against gerrymandering if the goal of gerrymandering is competitive districts, because I don't want lopsided anything. If I had my druthers, everything would be 50-50. And you would duke it out on ideas, on policy, on who was the best person, on who ran the best campaign, on who had the best ideas, not on who got the best drawing in the map process. For me, that's the way I would like to go, because maybe we wouldn't have the kind of extremism we have now. Maybe we wouldn't have the kind of corruption. Maybe we wouldn't have the kind of, average everyday people looking at our government with a jaundiced eye going, they're all crooks. Maybe.
I agree. The ability to vote people out means that they'd be scared of their voters again, which is how it's supposed to be. They're supposed to be worried that if they pass a crazy bill, people will, hold them accountable the next time they vote. And it's just not been like that. It's interesting. The most recent version of the maps pretend to have toss-up districts or competitive districts, but they're only toss-ups in the districts that lean a little bit Democrat. So all the Republican seats are safe, but all the Democrat seats could be competitive. It's clever. It makes for a good talking point.
But here's the thing, and this is where, look, I'm not going to beat up Republicans too much, honestly, because if you gave me the power to make things better for me, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to try and make my advantage better. So I'm not beating them up too much. The problem for me is that we let them do this. This should not be in their hands. There has got to be another way forward. And is that being discussed at all? I mean, is there a way is this so bad right now that people are finally going, you know what, we're just taking it away from you?
I think those conversations are definitely happening, but we won't see the official on what's going to happen probably until after this process ends, if it ever ends. At this point, I really am not sure.
If it ever ends.
It's my whole life, man. That's all I do.
So is it possible Ohio doesn't get 13 representatives in the House?
15. And yeah, it's possible, but I don't know what we would do at that point. We've got to send somebody to Congress. The one thing they're discussing is the possibility of moving the election. But the state legislators are firmly against that. And we've reached a point now where they're either going to have to do that very soon or just hold an election without certain districts. It's chaos is really the only word to describe it.
How many congressional districts do they have?
15. We just lost a seat last year.
Okay, I thought it was a 10-3 map. I must have read that wrong. But the thing that gets me is what happens if you don't get this done by then? That would be really crazy. Here's the other part. As you said, you're going to push off the elections. We're going to do all this stuff. How much money is this costing? I mean, how much could we be spending on roads and bridges and education and healthcare and I don't know, anything else? Just throwing out in the street for entertainment to watch people pick up. Anything better than this?
They just passed a bill through the House, I believe it was last week, for another $9 million to help with all of this. So the bill is racking up. It is taxpayer dollars that are being spent on, all of these lawsuits, all of the problems that we're having with having to move the logistical process of running an election back and back. It really is. It's very expensive to pay for all the lawyers and everything. And the longer it goes, the more we all have to pay.
So we should be out there screaming waste, fraud, and abuse, because look, they're wasting this on a system that they're clearly attempting to fraudulently screw around with. So what can we do? What can people do? What can our listeners in Ohio do? What can people outside of Ohio who want good democracy and good fair elections, what can we do?
So I am part of a group called the Equal Districts Coalition. We're the largest redistricting coalition in the state. We are a lot of unions make up this group, AFL, AFSCME, both teachers unions in Ohio, the farmers union just joined. And so we are getting all these groups together who all care about really different issues to fight for fair maps. And so you can sign up at our website. It's equaldistricts.com. We'll send you calls to action. We'll send you times when we want you to call your legislators and yell at them. Lots of opportunities there just to pay attention and make your voice heard when you can.
Call your legislators and yell at them. Should do that anyway. But really, Rachael, I appreciate your time. Great talking with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Rachael Coyle, she is the communications director there, Innovation Ohio. Check out their website, innovationohio.org. Also, the equaldistricts.com website if you want to get action alerts and all of that. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. If you're just joining us, remember, grab the podcast so you don't miss a minute of the program, especially the segment here with Rachael. Don't miss that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. Approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. It's infuriating. And this isn't new. This whole, maps thing, not new. The fact is, we've been focusing on it a lot more as of late because it's become so much more public. And look, it's become so much more high tech. They're literally splitting households to get down to where they can tell how an election is going to go before it's even cast. Which is why, it's interesting. I go back to the former guy and his complaining and whining about how, the stolen election, it was stolen from me. They didn't go to many congressional districts, did they? In fact, they didn't go to any. They didn't point out any Senate districts. They didn't point out any House districts because, look, you basically know the vast majority of how they're going to go. As soon as they turn the machines off, you can pretty much call every election because they have sliced and slivered them in ways. There's no surprise. They pay people huge amounts of money to know who's voting and which side they're voting on and which issues to tweak them on and where to push them and where to fear and smear and all of that. Which is why, for me, I look at this and I go, a state like Ohio, it's insane that the Republicans have that kind of absolute dictatorial control over a state that is, fairly close. 54-46 is not unreasonable. Sometimes even goes blue because you got the independents who jump one way or the other. This is a state that is somewhat of a swing state. And the Republicans know that, so they get their little mechanical pencils out, and they've got their computer algorithms and their programmers, and they've got everything, and they zip it up. It's not like in the old days where you had to really, put some shoe leather into it. And that's why this is something they shouldn't have control over. This is something that should be done as on a nonpartisan commission level. Let the League of Women Voters do it. I don't care at this point. Get it out of these damn politicians' hands. Give it to a third grade class at random. Couldn't be any worse than what they're doing. It's just, maybe even at some point you're going to have to think about a proportional representation system, because it's insane that Republicans, and when Democrats get the power, they do it too, that politicians give themselves that kind of advantage. And like I said, I'll be honest, I believe in good democracy, but if I've got the power to do it, yeah, I might. Yeah, I probably would. And you probably would too, which is why we should take it out of their hands. It's that simple. Equaldistricts.com, the website. You want to check that out if you want to get involved, if you want to sign up for their alerts and find out what they're doing, what they're working on. Well worth it. And I want to thank Rachael for coming on the program and sharing some thoughts on all of that. If you missed any of today's program, make sure you download the podcast. You can get the podcast at the website, thericksmithshow.com. We have all the places that you can find it, from iTunes to iHeart, from Stitcher to Podbean, Google, Audible, you name it. It's there wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Easy, convenient. Subscribe, share, all of that. Like, comment. We want to hear from you. If you got thoughts, comments, questions, I want to hear from you. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally and appreciate the feedback and input. Always great. Thanks so much for being here. Hope you'll come back next time. We'll see you back here again.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.